Well, hello everyone, and today we're going to do a Consider the Source where we talk about the adaptation versus the source material. And I'm going to be joined today by critic Al, and he is going to argue the point that the OG comic graphic novel of The Walking Dead is the far superior version. I'm going to be arguing that the TV show, ignoring all of the side quills, prequels, and subsequent Walking Dead materials and just stating strictly the TV show is better. So this should be an interesting one, and let's get into it. Well, hello everyone, and welcome, Critical Al. Thank you so much for joining me on this. We've been talking about doing this for a hot minute, and I'm glad you're able to make it. And how are you doing? Doing well today, yes?
Yes, all good here. Looking forward to this. As you say, we've been talking about doing this for quite some time.
Yeah. So just basically briefly, as you can, tell me when you got into the comics. Give me some info on the comics. I don't even know when the comics came out. Just tell me a bit that you can, some background on the comics for the uninitiated, for maybe somebody that's on the fence about maybe reading it, and you know, how you got into it, what you thought of it, and then juxtapose that against the show, and then bleed that into why you feel that the comics are the superior IP.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got into the comics around about 2004, which is about a year after they started being published. There was a guy at work, and I worked for an internet company, monitoring faults and stuff. So we didn't actually do much work unless there was a fault. So we'd sit there playing Mario Kart on our DSs and just reading comics and shit. It was a good gig. And then one day he just shoved this comic book at me, and I read it, and I think it was like issue 13 or something he had. It was round about the sort of the end of the Shane arc, I think. And I was just blown away. I was just like, wow, this is seriously cool. I was like, you've got the other sort of the back issues. He bought them to work one day, and I read them all, and from then I've read the whole damn thing every week until it finally finished a few years ago. Yeah, in a very shocking way, I must say, because nobody knew it was going to finish. It seemed like it was going to kick off a whole new storyline, and then next issue came out, and that's it, all done. Nobody knew it was going to end. So yeah, and I think it's one of the greatest comics that's been done in a long time. The character writing and everything is so good, but every now and again you would just get this really, really shocking. It's like the first time you read the Red Wedding in the George R.R. Martin Game of Thrones, in whichever the books that's in. I mean, Clash of Kings it might be, and you're like, whoa, and you kind of like just have to put the book down for me. Like, that was intense. That happens regularly in the comics. There is so much stuff in the comics that they cannot put in a TV show. You just would not be allowed to televise it.
I guess since you bring that up, I should do this as a pro forma.
Oh yeah.
Those who have not read the comic per se, we are not sophisticated enough YouTubers to censor ourselves and manipulate this in such a way that we can avoid spoilers. We'll try not to completely ruin your experience if you've not watched the show, and or
the main spoiler from the end of the comic. I will give you warning before I say it, because I don't want to spoil that. It is massive, but there's a number of changes from the TV show that I would want to go over.
Yeah.
That would change just because it was so brutal in the comics. They literally would not be able to put it on TV. They just wouldn't.
Yeah. So that's your warning, folks. Critical Al will be spoiling certain points about the comics, which I have also read most of, so I may be doing the same. I will be spoiling quite a bit of the TV show, so if you've not caught up on that, all the way to include season 11, I won't be discussing anything ancillary to the show, meaning the Daryl Dixon going to France show, or the reunion of Michonne and Rick, or the Dead City with Negan, and Maggie. None of that is going to be discussed on this show. I may do something at a later date to talk about all of the side quill, prequels, and sequels that have to do with The Walking Dead. But since they're both all rather, they're all still kind of ongoing. I think I'll go ahead and just save that for another time. Maybe it'll finish at some point. Maybe it won't. I don't even know. Maybe it'll just go on in perpetuity, however you say that. It's just never.
I thought there were some films coming out. Aren't they doing some?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know. I'm pretty caught up on it, but I don't know. But regardless, you will be experiencing some spoiler stuff. Some of it has to be said just because of how the contrast between the comic and the show and vice versa. So this is your warning. If you've not familiarized yourself with the entirety of the comic and the entirety of the 11 seasons of the main show, The Walking Dead, then this is your out. Go check those out and then come back to us and maybe take a look later. Or if you don't care about that, then hey, more power to you. And here we go. So we got Critical Al talking about his experience with the comic and why he thinks it is better. The floor is yours, Critical Al.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, really, it is just that the comic was an excellent analysis of what characters would do in this scenario.
Okay.
Be it the survivors, be it the other people that they encounter as time goes on. You've got the people that can't let go of their loved ones, even though they've turned, and they think that they can turn them back. There's a lot of subtle differences. For example, the first season obviously was Frank Darabont, wasn't it? And then he left. Now, the reason he left is because of the whole CDC instance, where Rick is basically told the secret behind the virus, that you don't have to be bitten. If you die, you come back as a zombie, regardless. And that isn't in the comics. It's found out much later. Well, not much later, but in a very different way, because the way that it's done in the comics is you find things out as time goes on. It sets up it's a very good job actually of doing like a mystery box, but not making it a mystery box.
Okay.
But just slowly showing you this world as it goes round, and you meet these different people. So you meet some people who are trying to lead a decent life, even though they've got people in the barn that used to be their family that they want to try and keep alive, kind of thing. You've got the psychos that are just out for everything, and some of this was done really well in the TV show. But what the TV show was watered down. So in the comics, for example, the whole Shane thing. Shane is killed by Carl while he's still a human. So you've still got the whole Shane's been with Laurie, and there's a big rift between Shane and Rick, and basically Shane tries to kill Rick so that he can have Laurie, and Carl has to shoot him dead. When Rick discovers that if you die, even if you're not bitten, you come back as a zombie, he has to go back and dig up Shane and kill him all over again. Kind of thing. There's also a massive change when it comes to the character of Carl and Sophia. In the comics, Carl survives to the end, all the way to the end, and Sophia also all the way to the end. She's not season 2, I think it was, wasn't they? Find her in the barn. That's not a thing. So they've messed around with quite a few characters, and what it did is it actually robs you of quite a few shocking moments. For example, in the comics, Carol, rather than being the character that she is in the TV show, which I have mixed feelings about, because she's very good, but other times it just seemed to be I don't know, like that the Daryl and Carol show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because obviously Daryl's a character that's not in the comics either, at all.
Right. Or his brother.
Or his brother. No, there is a racist character in the comics. I think his name was Otis, but it's not a big thing. Like, it's just, I think he's just sort of has a bit of a problem with some of the black people in the prison.
A lot of the characters, I think it's well known that a lot of the characters were reconceptualized for the TV show, either added to or taken away. Highlights being, Daryl and his brother didn't even exist in the comics. Nope. And then you have characters like Michonne, who are like borderline psychotic, her just being kind of moody, silent killer type for the beginning of her thing. You have very graphic stuff such as the mayor being a rapist and doing, really horrific things. I mean, not that he didn't on the show, but definitely, as you say, watered down for the TV series.
I mean, in the comic, because obviously he captures Michonne, and his guys take their turns with her as it is.
Yeah.
When she escapes, she goes absolutely postal on him.
Yeah.
Like beyond postal. She takes off an arm. She nails his nadgers to the floor with a nail gun.
I think it's also well known that a lot of the existing characters that we see on the show had a completely different storyline, not the least of which being Andrea. Lasts a lot longer. She's Rick's love interest.
She's Rick's main thing. Yeah. Rick loses an arm in the comics.
Sure. Well, he does in the show as well, though. It just in a later interpretation. So, but like I said, we're not going to discuss that, so I'm not even going to get into it. But so that, and then you have instances of, somebody like Carl, who unfortunately is supposed to be, as I understand it, Carl is he's the main character of the story, really. Most of what we see is him telling these things to his grandchildren and stuff like that. So in that way, a lot of people felt betrayed by, his character assassination. And then you have smaller stuff like Abraham lasts longer on the show than he does in the comic. Another big one would be like Shane. Was kind of a pivotal character for season 1 and 2, whereas in the book he's gotten rid of pretty quickly.
Within 6 issues or something stupid like that.
And he's shown as just kind of a goon. He's not really this complex character that
Bernthal did some really good work with that character as well.
I think Bernthal was able to do something with a lot of little. You know what I mean? He was able to change that up. So that's pretty. And Carol having a completely different arc.
Carol commits suicide by zombie in the
right.
She just has enough and walks up to a walker and just goes, come on in. Gives him a hug and gets bitten. I mean, Laurie goes out in a completely different way. Laurie just gets shot with the baby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they still do a lot of that. Like, the character that walks up and just lets the walk. I mean, that still happens in season 4.
When they just move it around a little bit, don't they?
So in that way, you're actually getting to the heart of my argument, which is people who are purists like yourself for the comic, they argue that, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but they tend to argue that, well, it strayed too far from the source material, and I don't like that. I can get behind that in big instances like Carl, where that's kind of the linchpin of the story, and their reasoning for doing so was very silly. He's just getting older, so we're just, it's not going to work. Well, that's dumb. That's a dumb reason to do that, and maybe they couldn't, renegotiate the contracts with him. So, in that way, that's something that I'm less forgiving of. But for overall with the show, I think I would not want to watch a page for page remake of that. That's kind of what my channel is all about, at least the portion of Consider the Source, because I think you have to adapt something. I think one of the more notable ones being like The Prestige. I definitely would not have wanted to see a page for page remake of The Prestige. I think it's far surpassed in the movie version.
I think Nolan's film is better.
The book has its merits, but and I kind of in that way feel the same way, and I'll get to this when I get to my portion of it. I kind of in that way feel the same thing for The Walking Dead. But anyway, go ahead.
It's refreshing, isn't it? I mean, you got the Negan scene, and you're like, oh, this is going to go completely different, and then it is literally a recreation of the panel in the comic.
Right. I think you got to pick your battles with that. I think there's times when the source material will get it so right and it'll work, like the Walking Dead Negan scene. At least I feel that it works. Maybe you didn't. I don't know.
No, I thought it worked very well, actually.
Oh, okay.
I thought that, and then the problem with the Negan scene was not scene necessarily, but all the stuff after it was so stretched out.
Yes, that I agree with you there. I completely agree with you.
you know.
But then you have
that's where I have the problems with the TV show. And I think I watched the end of the Negan arc and I was just like, no, I'm done. This is just being stretched out.
So that would have
so
brought
much.
you, I think, I'm not sure, but I think that brings you to season 7. I
Okay.
think you watched more of it. I think you watched more of it than you think you did, because I think the end of the Negan villain arc per se is season 7 or 8. I think they because like you say, they did stretch it the fuck out. It stretched out for a long time.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it did. So, but yeah, go ahead.
But he was good. I mean, the problem I have, I mean, it's going to come from those things when you experience one medium first and it hits you so hard, even though your point about it not being a frame for frame recreation is absolutely right, because you don't want to just experience the same thing in a different medium. I just felt there were so many moments that were so impactful in the comic that were missing because they just weren't prepared to put it on TV.
Sure.
Like, for example, Herschel's daughters, what happens to them in the prison?
Okay.
Like, that's fucked up. You do not see it coming at all.
Is that so that's not Maggie and
no, I can't remember their names now, but basically because in the comic you have the boys that do, when you get the don't look at the flowers bit that Carol does.
Yes.
In the comics, that's 2 boys that do it, and that's why they have to get killed. But Herschel has 2 twins that survive the whole farm arc, and they go to the prison, and they're all in the prison. And then he's like, "Oh, where have the twins gone?" And they're decapitated. You find their decapitated bodies like lying on the floor of a barbershop, and you're like, "Okay, which of the prisoners has done it?" kind of thing, and just. I felt the prison arc was quite underplayed, actually. And it became more about the whole Laurie part, giving birth and then obviously having to be killed. And then you got the meme-worthy moment where you get Rick and Carl,
Yeah.
Carl! Yeah. Carl! I thought Andrew Lincoln did a great job as well. I really did think he was good.
I think I think everybody agrees on that. I think Andrew Lincoln was really the heart and soul of the show, and the show took a serious step. And that's not anything against Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and we'll get to that when I get to my portion. But I will say that switching from Rick's character played by Andrew Lincoln to Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan, as charismatic and as great as he is, he's really not a showrunner. He's not a show leader.
Yeah. This was the other problem I had with the TV show. Is, as I say, the TV show became very much sort of a big part of it was like the Daryl and Carol show.
That's true.
And then
that's true.
Another bit of it was the Michonne and Rick relationship, which never happened in the comics. He stays with Andrea for like ages and ages and ages.
Okay.
And I just felt it became, rather than being so much an ensemble thing that it is in the comics, where people get bumped off all the time, but it is about a group of survivors. The Walking Dead just seems to become more about their personalities, and just Rick being like the ultimate badass, which he isn't so much in the comics. He's the leader, but it is much more an ensemble thing. It's not sort of these superstars, I guess, and it is more about the world around them in the comics. In my opinion, I just felt that for me, it just worked out much better that way, rather than when I tuned into the TV show, it was like, what badass thing is Rick or Carol or Daryl going to do this week? If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you think the show would have benefited from sticking to that with the comics, with having it more ensemble like than as opposed to, it's the Rick show or the Daryl Carol show, things like that? Do you think people got too attached to certain main characters, and that's why when those characters are either removed or sidelined, that the show had a serious downward tick?
I do think that it wouldn't probably have had the longevity if it had done what I liked. I think the fact that it became the Daryl Carol, power show and that kind of thing allowed them to stretch it all out and, go for as long as it did. But I mean, from what I understand, it ran for 11 seasons in the end?
Yeah, 11 seasons.
Which is very good for a TV show. And that's most of a career for some actors. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd think about how long it takes to make that show. That's a good chunk of their career that, is tied up in one show. So I can understand why you want it to go like that. But some of it lingered so much, and with the comic, it just never really felt like that. It never felt like you were really stuck in one place. Everything just kept moving, even when you got to the the kingdom and the Ezekiel thing, and his white tiger and stuff like that. It all just kept moving, and then it was right at the end when it seemed like it was going to settle that they finally ended the comic. So massive spoiler coming up here. They come to a place called the Commonwealth, and I think this happens in the TV show as well. But basically, there's a fight for the Commonwealth. Rick kind of comes out on top to do his way, and then he says to everybody, this is our future. We can live here. We are no longer the Walking Dead. And then because he's deposed a woman mayor, her son comes up and shoots him in the middle of the night. And it ends there on the cliffhanger. And then that's where everybody was like, oh, what's going to happen here? And then they just end the comic in the next issue. Carl comes in, Rick's turned into a zombie, Carl has to put him down. And then Carl, has to go and see, what he's going to do in regards to revenge, remembering the lessons that his father gave him. And then you get, like, there was a bonus issue set 25 years in the future where you see how Carl has become kind of like a new Rick, but learn to, because they've built a bit more of humanity in the culture, he hasn't had to make the hard choices that Rick has had to make. So he's like an improved version almost, that Rick became, not corrupted necessarily, but certainly damaged by what happened to him over the course of the comic. And from that perspective, it was very, very impressive. So that was great. Okay. And it was a shock to see it end, but I think I would rather have seen it end like that rather than labor on like some stuff does. It never gets going and never does what it needs to do.
I mean, I would definitely argue, if I'm arguing against my own point, I would probably argue that the show definitely has overstayed its welcome in a lot of ways. It did in its first run, and I think them dragging it out, keeping it on life support. But I'll talk more about that, as we go.
So many spin-offs as well, man. You had Fear the Walking Dead, and then wasn't it like an Atlanta one or something?
And there is some quality to be had with all of it, but I think in the way I will concede the point that it seems to me, from what I know of the comic, because I've picked up random graphic novel compendiums or omnibus, they call them, of the comics of The Walking Dead. And I think that, especially the way that you say that it wrapped up, and as I understand that it has, from, getting on YouTube and watching, critics talk about it, I think that the ending of it was probably superior for the comic, having something like that happen. I'm not super hyped at the idea that Rick would go through that huge journey just to get clapped by some rando and then have to get put down by Carl and then get a 25-year later, blah, blah, blah. But I do like the fact that Carl was handed the keys to the kingdom. And I mean, they made such a big deal in the show about all of this is for you, Carl. Every sacrifice, every challenge, everything, every war that I fought was for Carl. And then have him
kill him off.
thrown away was really, it didn't sit right. It didn't sit right with me, and it didn't sit right with a lot of the fandom. So if you've given all that you, and keep in mind, you can have a little bit of counterpoint when I'm talking about the show. But if give me at least one thing that you dislike about the comic, despite yourself, and the fact, and one thing that you do like about the show, despite yourself. So if you can.
So if I was to give one thing that I disliked about the comic, I would say that because it does go through so many characters and it is an ensemble thing, that there isn't always the room for the character development that you get in a TV show. Although I think the TV show went too far in making some people basically superheroes, I do like the fact that you did get more of a persona out of the TV show characters. A lot of the stuff in the comic, it's like we barely knew them and they've been bumped off, almost like red shirts in Star Trek, Okay. So that's probably one of the few things that I wasn't so keen on. But apart from that, I can't think of too many flaws with the comic book. It did so much well.
No, that's good. No, give me that's fine. Give me something that you do like about the show despite yourself.
I think
I think I can guess what you're going to say, but go ahead. Let me see if I'm right.
I think one of the things I really liked about the show, and I did really like it, was you had like a core group, I guess, and the dynamics between that core group were really good.
Okay.
You know, I just think they took it too far. As with everything, once something's successful, once something starts to make money, you get spin-offs out the wazoo, and then they're like, right, these characters are the ones that, you know, test really well in audience surveys or whatever. So we're going to make it all about those and, you know, fuck everybody else, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I would also say that some of the acting in the show wasn't great. Most of it was okay.
Oh, well, you could give me your you can give me your counterpoints when I'm talking when I'm I just wanted to see if there was anything that you could say positively for the show that sticks out in your mind. Or
some of the actors were great, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, the character dynamics were good. It's just as with everything, it just got taken too far, and they just seemed to like it was that water cooler thing. Was have you seen The Walking Dead? And it's like once everybody gets into it, and I think that's the other thing. Like with the comic book, The Walking Dead comic, it was popular, but it was popular within a niche. And then, like everything, once it goes completely mainstream, it's just like, they're never going to give me what I want out of it. Do you know what I mean?
I could see that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I could definitely see that. And you know, there's a little gatekeeping I do with some of the stuff that I like. I don't. You know, there's a book series about Will Trent, a detective in Atlanta, and I was very happy with those books. I think Karen Slaughter's very talented. I don't usually read female authors. I don't think, but because I think they have a hard time grasping masculine characters, but she did not. And then they've turned it into an NBC series that when they completely not only do they race swap him. And race swap pretty much every fucking character because of course they do because it's NBC. They cuck him and turn him into this soy boy introverted. I mean, he's said to be like a child of abuse from the foster system, but tall Scandinavian, blonde guy that doesn't understand social cues, maybe slightly on the spectrum, has dyslexia. Yeah. That would have been plenty of stuff to work with there. And instead they turn him into a Latino, well-dressed soy boy cuck, and just, 5 feet tall and just, always listens to what the females are saying and walks around with his little puppy. And
there's only so much you can change before you lose the character. Do you know what I mean?
Right. It's like that analogy about the ship building. If you take apart the ship and rebuild it, is it still the same ship? That kind of thing. So, but I mean, they didn't rebuild a ship; they turned it into a fucking rowboat. But that being said, yeah, I could see some gatekeeping on that. I just I feel, and I'm about to go to my point here, that what we got was definitely something worthwhile of pulling it out of that niche and turning it into. We don't always get that, but sometimes we do. And I think The Walking Dead, as long as it did go on a little too long, I do think that it's worthy of that. So if you're all set, I'm going to jump to my argument.
Go for it, dude.
Why I prefer the adaptation. So I had no knowledge of that. There was a comic in 2010. All I saw of this was staying home for the night for Halloween, or at least I thought I was. I wound up going to the bar later. But staying home, hanging out with my kid on Halloween on 2010. And I see AMC is coming up with, a zombie show. It looked pretty interesting to me right off the bat. And I decided, okay, I'll give this a look. And Frank Darabont, one of my favorite directors, really gave us something of quality to look at. I have, in retrospect, I have looked at the comic. I think it's a valuable comic. I think it's got a lot of, obviously its source material itself is great. I am very happy with the changes that they made up to that one exception that I stated during Critical Owl's, his exposition of what he likes and doesn't like, except for that one thing about sidelining Carl. I think that almost all of the changes are good ones. I'm not super happy how Andrea's character wound up, because she was one of my favorite characters from the comic, and I liked her in the early stages. I like that actress. So, that didn't really sit well with me, but it's really a small nitpick. The additions of a longer version of Shane that we got, of Daryl and his brother, how they went about going into the prison, and especially the very first season, the very first episode, where they talk about, it gives a longer hospital thing, whereas in the comic, you kind of just get him in media res, like right in the middle of things is going on. Rick is already going down, where I think taking its time and showing little backstory of a botched robbery, where, notwithstanding the part where, Andrew Lincoln, where Rick tells his deputy to take his weapon on safe and pay attention, because his weapon was a Glock, so he wouldn't have taken it off safe. So that was a dumb. I've brought that up in other streams and videos talking about nitpicks with weapons and stuff. But that aside, having Rick get wounded, having the little back and forth with him and Shane, showing the friendship that they had, where I think that only gets like a little screen page in the comic as a flashback thing later on. I think that's all they really give it. The brotherhood thing between Rick and Shane is really well done. And again, this is just down to Andrew Lincoln's performance and, of course, John Bernthal's performance. I think they probably may have even written it on the show to be that Shane was just this kind of small one-off character. But I think Bernthal has such a great presence and great acting ability that they probably were like, you know what? Let's give this guy a little bit more time. Let's do a little bit more with this character. And I can't confirm that because I don't know if that's 100% true. But just like James Marsters playing Spike on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I'd be willing to bet that they originally intended him to be killed off a lot sooner, and Bernthal injected it with such charisma that they decided, you know what, I think we're going to give this guy a little more time. And I like it. And I like that they dovetailed the story to show that the toxic, see what I did there, persona of Shane, how quickly he adapted to this new world. And it's even pointed out to him by one of the main characters that, this world is perfect for you because this is the kind of world that you would like to live in. That resonates with me because it is definitely the world that I would like to live in. I think it is a world that a lot of guys would prefer to live in. Yeah, it would suck to have to be, on the run. But you know what? You know what we wouldn't be dealing with? DEI and woke bullshit and people crying about Sydney Sweeney's jeans.
I was going to say, you wouldn't
like that going on. I don't think the protesters that are protesting for the rights of the Walking Dead, of the walkers, would last for. I'm not doubting that we would have them. We would probably have wokies out there saying, these undead have just as many rights as people do. They are people as well. Yeah, but as soon as they start getting eaten, then it's all out the window. So I like that. And especially the performances. There's so many great scenes. A lot of people are not fans of season 2. They felt that it dragged and it's boring, but I think it's very, very necessary to have a season like that, because once we get into season 3, it finds its legs and the action really ramps the fuck up. And so if we didn't get to know and love these characters, we would not be so heartbroken and invested in them when they die. That's something that I find is very lacking in the comics. The comics, and this is also true for the boys comics, which I'm planning on doing something on later on down the road. The comics in some ways are very
that one as well.
Yeah, the comics are very mean-spirited. They are very it's sort of it's an inverse of what the MCU does, whereas the MCU kind of waters down and doesn't really give you a lot of the things that are very special to people who are long run readers of X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four, things like that, and it just turns it into this kind of cheeky light show and all that bullshit. Because of that reason, a lot of people don't like the current MCU, myself included, unless it's like a more grounded story. But comics like The Walking Dead and The Boys are sort of an inverse to that, because I feel like those ones are just kind of giving it face value. It's a little pro forma, and it doesn't resonate with you as much. I don't think it can coming off of the page like that, because you're being shown what it is, whereas the actors can emote if they're good actors. And I think it would be hard for, no matter what people's complaints about the show is, I think it's hard for people to argue that the acting is not top tier, from the small ancillary characters to the main protagonist to the antagonist. I think that almost everybody will agree that all of the dialogue, all of hang on a second, sorry, all of the stories and the trauma and the experiences that these characters go through, we go through it with them. Now, of course, there is such a thing as, emotional overload and too much suffering porn and things like that. But I mean, if you read the comics, I mean, like you're stated, like, the two twins wind up with their heads cut off in the prison and things like that. Now, obviously, they weren't going to do something like that in the TV series. In fact, I'm still surprised at some of the things that they were able to get away with on the show. But that aside, what I have read of the comics, it's much more graphic, no pun intended.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
And I'm not always a fan of that, just for the sake of, I don't need to know that, like, for instance, on The Boys, I don't need to know that Homelander's a really bad guy because he eats a baby. Like, I don't need that. That's, I get it. Okay. Like, I don't need to know that there's a serial killer walking around in the, you can just show me there's a serial killer walking around in the prison on The Walking Dead without him chopping off the heads of the twin girls of Herschel's daughters and things like that. So
have you ever read Crossed?
Say again?
Have you ever read Crossed?
I have not. It
makes The Walking Dead and The Boys look like the Teletubbies.
Sure. And, a lot of the times that, people have that incel culture thing that they say, I mean, but there's something to be said for just writing. I mean, when I was a kid, we read comics and some of us would experiment with our own comic stuff. And, and you'd just be like, hey, what if Iron Man turned into a zombie? And there is a niche for that. And there is some value in it. It's been done, and, one of my favorite comics growing up was What If, because What If would take a pivotal moment that happened in it's been done. Ignore that Disney Plus bullshit.
Oh, that just turned into what if this character was more diverse?
Right. What if DEI was more DEI in this DEI universe? But no, and what if you had stuff like, what if Wolverine actually got turned into a vampire by Dracula? What if the X-Men vampires fought the Inferno demons, things like that, like
they
really
just allowed the writers and the artists to completely go off the chain, didn't it?
Yeah, cool, because there's no consequences, because it's an alternate universe and everything resets. So not that there's much consequences in the comic book, but I mean, these kind of grounded comics like The Boys, like The Walking Dead, I mean, grounded as much as superheroes and zombies can be. When you do these things, these actions do have consequences. These people don't come back from life. They don't get respawned. Things like that. So, in that way, yes, it's superior, but also it puts you kind of pigeonholed. It's like, after you chop off little twin girls' heads, where do you go from there? So I think that the show is able to make you care about these characters, follow along on this journey. And when something bad happens to them, that you get upset. When they do something heroic, you get upset. I mean, there's a reason why you mentioned water cooler talk. There's a reason why people would come in on Mondays and talk about the most recent Walking Dead experience, because it'd be something cool. And then, and the things like, the memes that came out, like, oh shit, Rick Grimes is leaning forward, something's about to happen, and just, down to, his performance, and you had these great performances from Berthnall here, the barn scene, pivotal watershed action scene. In The Walking Dead, they find out, and just like in the comics, they find out that Herschel and his family are keeping walkers in the barn because they are under the impression that they can be somehow rejuvenated or brought back to life, or
they care about. Herschel flat out tells them. They're like, oh, we'll just stay in the barn. He's like, no, you can't do that. My family's in there. Like, what?
Right.
He's like, yeah, they'll turn into zombies, but they'll be all right once this is all over.
Right. I think this is far superior in the show because it is left as like a ticking bomb thing. We as the audience know that there's a barn full of walkers 20 feet away from, our main characters, but most of the main characters, with the exception of Glenn, don't know this. And then Glenn, of course, gives it up. And, during the time when Rick has been convinced to be complicit in this, he's off reservation, and Shane pulls a little coup, and rightly so. Again, this is how we show that Shane has already adapted to this world. He's already decided, okay, this is how the world is. We don't have time to fuck around and put our lives in danger. I'm going to protect the group. And, he's a man of particular skills. I like that, like as in the comics, he's just a big old goon. He really does nothing. And then
he's basically a plot mechanism in the comics.
Right.
Nothing
but, in the, in the TV series, this guy's a serious fucking operator. Like he knows what the fuck he's doing. Just this scene alone, when he's got just a Glock and these guys are coming in, and he decides to like put one in her heart and her lungs and her spleen. He's like alphabetizing her fucking organs while he's shooting them just to make a point. And look at him, he's just dropping headshots. Everybody else is kind of like blasting him. Daryl's got a shotgun. T-Dog, at least he wasn't holding the gun sideways. Andrea's, doing pretty good. Glenn jumps in to shoot, and he's got a shotgun. I don't know how it takes more than one shot with a shotgun. And look at this no-look shot right here. Boom. So, I think that stuff is so well done. And then all of this goes by, and we get the scene of at the end of the barn scene, where the whole point of what we've been leading up to was, they've been looking for this little girl, and the little girl's been in the barn the whole time. And instead of Shane, who's led this uprising, taking her down, Rick has to do it, has to pull out that Colt Python and fucking put in some man's work. And this is a heart, this like pulls on the heart.
That was a crushing scene, man. That was very good. I mean, the one that comes out of the barn thing is that in the TV show, he like puts loads of people in the barn and then has like his kids feed them and stuff. In the comic book, at least, it's only his family, which makes more sense. I mean, I know they want loads of people because they want that scene at the end of it, but it's fucking
I think it's more than his. I think it's more than his family. I think it's some random. I think it's like neighbors and
exactly. It's loads of people. But it's only sort of people that he cares about in the comic book. In this, he seems to be everybody, and it's done so you can get that scene in a TV show. I get that, and I will say that for the first probably the first 4 seasons, man, I was gripped by the TV show. I was like, this is amazing, really good. But Christ, I felt it went off a cliff.
Well, we'll get I'm closing up on my ending argument, so we'll get to that. So I feel throughout, even with the time skips, all of that stuff, I still feel like the series is worthwhile. I think it's superior to the OG printed content, and it's for all of the reasons that I said. I think the acting is really superior. I think the writing is great. All of that is like top tier. Plot, everything. I will say this. Now, I guess I'll go to the thing that I don't like about the show and what I do like about the comics. So I'll say what I don't like about the show first. And I'm not alone in this opinion among the YouTube crowd. The boomerang storytelling that Kirkman adapted and the other showrunners adapted for the show. And what I mean by that, it's a kind of, they would lead up to a certain plot, or they'd lead up to a certain crux of the show. They really started doing this shit in season 4 and 5. And then, it got, and 6, 7, it really got bad. So they'd have a certain plot go forward. And they did it well in season 4. In season 4, the prison gets overtaken by the mayor and, not overtaken, but at least destroyed where they can't. It's no longer livable. And so the survivors of the prison war between the mayor and his acolytes, and now this is the show I'm talking about.
I can't remember the show. Does he turn up in a tank?
Yeah, they turn up in a tank. And it basically just makes the prison unlivable. And the survivors of our, I guess we'll call them the group, Rick's group. I guess a lot of them are, I think most people refer to them as the survivor group. So our survivor group who's left gets splintered into like 4 different factions and goes in different ways. Some of them are wounded. Most of them have very little supplies or ammo or weapons, and they wind up making their way to Terminus, which is offering some sort of sanctuary, red flag sanctuary for all that kind of thing. So this form of boomerang storytelling I didn't mind, because they were able to linchpin it and show, like for instance, they'd show a scene, and I don't have a clip of it, but if you've seen season 4, you'll know what I'm talking about. They'll show a scene of a certain area where an action has taken place, and then, you know, they come back to it in the next show or the next clip, and then you know, they break down the story. So you'd follow one little splinter group. So you had like the big football guy, I forget his name, and the two little girls, and Carol and the baby, and then they're following along, and they wind up, because they're all heading to the same point on the railroad tracks of Terminus, where this supposed sanctuary is. They all sort of overlap each other until they finally find each other, and they meet up, you know, at the one location. So you have that. You have Abraham and his group. They've scooped up Tara and Glenn. You have, you know, a very wounded, you know, Andrew Lincoln, Rick Grimes, and his son. They managed to link up with Michonne, who up to that point thought maybe she was back on her own, but she links up with the group after decimating hordes and hordes of walkers with her katana. And, you know, then we have like other splinter groups like Maggie, and she's linked up with a couple other survivors from the prison, and they manage to make their way and eventually all kind of find each other again, with a few casualties notwithstanding, things like that. That kind of boomerang storytelling I didn't mind, but when they started to go bad was in 5 and 6, where they would go with a plot narrative, follow it along, and then leave it on a cliffhanger, then reverse focus, follow another character who may or may, you know, most notably when Glenn's, you know, I think it's either 5 or 6, when Glenn looks like he's been killed, you know, going completely against the grain on the comic, and it looks like he's been killed. And then the next episode is all Morgan backstory. What happened to Morgan?
So much of that.
Yeah. So
just
what
stretching
happened?
It out, man. Just stretching it out.
Yeah. So that and they used it and reused it so many times. Then the lineup scene with Negan, as well played as it was, leaving that on a cliffhanger so that we had to wait 4 or 5 months to find out who. And then they do the fucking boomerang storytelling again in the new season, because it starts off now I will grant them this, the title of that season opener after the lineup season, when they come back, I think it's season 7, that season opener is really great, because, you know, the title of the show is There Will Come a Day When You Won't, hearkening back to season 1, when Rick thanks the doctor for allowing him and his group to not get incinerated inside the CDC. And he says, I thank you for this. And he said, there'll come a day when you won't. That was they were very good about those little callbacks and things like that. Now, that being said, that boomerang storytelling lost a lot of its audience, because people would get emotionally exhausted, because you couldn't just binge all of these stuff. Now, on a rewatch, if you have this on Netflix or Plex or whatever you have it on, maybe you bought it on DVD even, you can binge these at your leisure and decide which shows you're going to watch. But going back to the time when you had to wait on AMC to pop this out and then wait for the next episode, this was really degrading people's good faith and goodwill and their patience. And that is one of the main things I disliked about the show. They did finally stop using that in later seasons, but by then we'd already lost Andrew Lincoln, with promises for him to come back. We had the pandemic, we had writer strikes, things like that. And then it just became a fatigue of, you know, oh my God, what new big bad is going to happen this season that these guys got to deal with. And the funny thing is, a lot of the big bads that were exhausting people were people like, you know, the Whisperers, which was a big thing in the comics, but yet by time they pop up in the series, people are already exhausted from all of the wars and all of the bullshit and things like that. And again, Jeffrey D. Morgan,
stupid decisions as well, like Rick trusting the scavengers and that kind of thing, and they just immediately betraying him. Like, he's too smart for that shit. But like the alpha woman or whatever her name, that weird looking woman, he fucking pals up with her anyway. And I'm like, nah, man. I just got so fed up with some of the decisions that were being made, and it was like, this didn't happen in the comic, and there's a reason this didn't happen in the comic.
Right. you know, and they do character sabotage. Like I mentioned, Andrea is one of the more notable character
Yeah.
sabotaged. I
She's
mean,
so
she's a
badass in
total,
the comic as well, man. But
yeah,
like,
she's a total
she's
badass in the comic,
it never
and they made
becomes
her,
about her. It never
yeah,
becomes about her and Rick even. She's
yeah,
just a character that happens to be a sharpshooter and saves their asses loads of times.
yeah. No, she's great. They kind of redeemed that a little bit in one of the spin-off shows, but again, like I said, they don't. That's not even really worth mentioning. So I mean, it's like
Just
they
like
took it,
Marvel, though, I don't want to be watching spin-off shows to get the other
right,
half.
and you don't like, listen. That's not how you don't have a main you know, established character like Andrea and then just go, you know what, we really kind of did her dirty in the main series. Let's revive a amalgam of her with two different characters in a spin-off show, and that'll make everybody happy. It's like, dude, you should have just done that. It's like the Star Wars shit where they're just like, oh no, none of those books after the movies are canon, but we're gonna pick and choose. We'll cherry pick and take the stuff we like, and then we'll do what we want with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. I don't want to trigger you. I don't want to trigger you, Critical Al. I won't do that. So there's my chief, you know, my overview of the show. There's my chief complaint about the show. Here's what I like about the comics, and I kind of touched on this during your review, but I'll just you know, caveat onto it and just extrapolate a little bit more, which is basically I like the finished product. I like that they had a very clear delineation between, you know, like where characters are going to start, what kind of stuff are we going to put in the middle, and they cap it off at the end. It makes logical sense. I'm not super jazzed about the idea that you know, that this guy just shoots Rick and then Rick has to be put down. But I mean, I can see the sort of Shakespearean irony in it. So
yeah, that's very much what I thought they were going for.
Yeah,
I'm not the toppling of the king.
Yeah, I'm not too down on it. But again, I think, and I definitely think that some of the things that they did in the comic played better, and had they adapted them into the show, I think that would have worked better. And I think vice versa. I mean, because as far as I know, I think the show was going on while the comic was going on. They could have introduced some of the ideas from the show and injected those even into the comic, and I think it would have been okay. I think that would have been, you know, a good way to meld the two IPs, but maybe they wanted to keep them separate for a reason. But in that way, I do appreciate the comic for what it is. And at the end of the day, you know, I will never well, with the exception of the Prestige, I will never completely lambast or shit on, you know, the OG, whatever the source is, because you won't have the adaptation. Even though I usually side with the adaptation, you can't have that without the source itself. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, you know, I'm appreciative of it, and I do like it. But at the end of the day, I have to go with the thing that I prefer. So where does that leave us? Whose argument won better? This is one of those things where it's extremely subjective. If you think that the comic would be fine standing alone as a little niche product that, you know, no one else, you know, read except for, you know, the few people in on it, or if you're a fan of the show and you think that the comic is mean-spirited, any and all of that stuff is completely valid. This is down to your subjective opinion. Critical Al and I are only trying to give you guys a different perspective of where we are coming from, where we have a source material that deviates and turns into a different kind of adaptation. This case being not a movie, but a long-running TV series. Maybe some might argue
too long. And what I would say is, had they done this as a tight 7 seasons in and out TV series, maybe I could have felt it did surpass the comic. But I just feel that it just lost its way and got so bloated at some point. They were just like, yeah, we need to keep this going as long as we can. And as you say, they do that stupid boomerang storytelling where, like, this is a pivotal moment, but now we're going to go somewhere else for 4 episodes. And it's like, well, people are going to lose interest. It's very, it's like that dodgeball scene, isn't it? You know, this is it's a brave play. Let's see if it pays off for them, kind of thing. You know?
Yeah,
I'm not sure that it did, because people did. Like, it's one thing to have a TV show and have it finished and everybody loves it all the way through. It doesn't happen very often, but it's one thing to have that. But to have something just drag on so long, eventually everybody just drops off, and the viewership did just drop off on The Walking Dead. You could just see people just weren't talking about it anymore. You know, it's not the kind of thing that Westworld did, but Westworld did it in the space of like 2 seasons, and Walking Dead took 7 or 8. So yeah,
I mean, I think most people would argue that the Walking Dead went off the rails after the first season, or not Walking Dead, Westworld went off the rails.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It had one good season and it shit the bed so spectacularly. I mean, that first season, again, it was water cooler. When we were at work, people weren't talking about anything else. It's like this amazing. And it took a long time to get to season 2, if I remember correctly. It was like at least a year and a half before it came out. And it came out and it was crap. And they just, they didn't have any momentum at all. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. I think the one thing I will say about The Walking Dead is I'm really happy it happened when it did and not in the age of woke.
Well, I mean, it is still happening in the age of woke. I mean, we do have all of the spin-off shows, but I mean,
and apparently some films to come for Andrew Lincoln. I don't know what's happened with those.
I'm kind of happy to say that as much as Negan isn't exactly a character that can carry and be the main protagonist of a show, on his own show, he's still pretty Negan. They haven't really watered down Negan. He's still pretty brutal. He's still kind of a dick. And I think if you revisit the show and you come back to where he becomes part of the main group, I think you'll like what he does, because he is Negan and he is all the time. And I think it's a very interesting counterpoint to Matt. He and Maggie make a great foil from each other. I mean, you actually start rooting for Negan more than you root for Maggie.
That's not hard. I found Maggie really annoying. In all honesty, like Negan, at the end of the comic, Negan is almost a completely rehabilitated character. Like, he's part of the community.
He's part of the community, but he's not completely rehabilitated. Yeah, he's not completely rehabilitated. Let's be clear about that. He's definitely not rehabilitated. If you get a chance, maybe even just look up Negan clips on YouTube if you're not interested in going into the show, and I think you'll be pleasantly.
Sort of, how can I put it? He's just come round to see Rick's side of things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And now Rick's gone, he feels compelled to, part of it is because of the world that Rick's created. I think Negan realizes that he doesn't need to be Negan anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
hopefully some of what I've given you,
I like about the different characters is everybody in it feels that they are that way because they need to be.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
Like the cannibals are doing that because they feel it's necessary. The people who are taking all the supplies off people are doing it because of survival needs. And Negan is acting like he is with the saviors because he thinks that is the only way to go about things, and it takes Rick to show him something different. So yeah, there's a lot of things in the comic, and the comic is it's a long bloody comic. I think it's nearly 300 issues in total.
Is it?
Because there's a lot of compendiums as well, and the compendiums are very good to pick up.
Yeah, that's mostly where I get it from. I get from the compendiums. I'll go to the library to get some reading material or something for research, and I'll see a Walking Dead thing, and I'll grab it.
193 issues in total. So yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, it's a very long running comic. I mean, it's like 2003, and I reckon it finished probably around like 2020, maybe.
Yeah. Whereas the main series,
2019 it ran, so I was close.
Yeah, the main series runs until 2021. So we are going to wrap it up. I'm going to try to keep it under an hour so Critical Al can download this and upload it onto his own channel.
Yeah, I'll stick up my channel with a link to your channel.
Totally fine.
It's been good, man. We should do The Boys and also Jurassic Park.
We should do that. The Boys is definitely something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Jurassic Park, all you're going to have is me shitting on Jurassic Park for, I've gone to see every Jurassic Park film in the theater, and I've hated every single one of them. Whereas I can find redeeming. No, I've not. Now that's fair. Maybe I need to read those, but I've got a stack of books on my desk that I've still not read. I'm working on a book myself, a sequel to my current book, Slapdash. So, but the link to Critical Al's channel will be in the description. And as I say, I've given him permission to go ahead and download this video and upload it to his own channel. And hopefully he'll do the same for me and tag me in that one as well. And join us next time. Absolutely. And we're going to get a good wraparound before the new season comes out of what is better, The Boys, the original comic book source material, or the adaptation? Until next time, thank you for considering the source with Critical Al and I. Have a good
Cheers.
one.